Master, hello. I am an exchange student from the Hong Kong Institute of Education. I am an English major, and I just attended your lecture. You said that life is like a dream, and in the end, it all amounts to nothing. Since it all amounts to nothing anyway, why do we still need to give life meaning? Because whether a life is meaningful or meaningless, in the end, it still comes to nothing. And the more I think about it, the more I fall into a state of nihilism. It even makes me feel that the very act of giving life meaning, even the act of giving life meaning, is itself meaningless. So my question is, since it all amounts to nothing, why do we still give life meaning?
Buddhism actually has very clear teachings on this particular point. Because samsara is impermanent, empty in nature, and without self. If we dig deeper, we will see it this way. But in the mundane world, in appearances, we still have to strive. Because we are dreaming. If we are dreaming, then in order to awaken, we still have to fulfill this mission. This is something not just I, but you would also admit. Because if you think about it, when you die in the end, everything you have done in your life, won't it all become empty? It definitely will. But just because of death, it doesn't mean you should do nothing right now either. So I need to understand this principle. When I die, or when I reach the end, indeed, everything I have done in this life will all be let go of. But I still have to strive, so that's why I've been saying all along. What I mean by facing things positively is just this. Even though it is empty in nature, we still need to pursue principles that are meaningful for our future lives, life after life. We must continue to strive. There is no contradiction in this.
Master, hello. I am a graduate student from the Hong Kong Institute of Education. Just now, I listened to your lecture where you talked about the topic of dreams, and I would like to ask, in our life experiences, we always have these moments. When we are at a certain place, experiencing a certain scene or a particular event, I feel like this event is somehow familiar, as if we have already experienced it in a dream. My question is it possible that everything before our eyes, everything happening right now, is actually illusory by nature? Are we simply living in another world, in a dream of our own? If life is a dream, then is this dream one in which we live inside our own dream, or are we living in someone else's dream? Or is it that the world itself is just one big dream?
Regarding this question in particular, I think that many young people often like to ask if life is really a dream, but I don't see it that way. I firmly believe that life is a dream. This is my perspective, and this can be understood from two perspectives. From our own point of view, we are currently dreaming this dream. It can also be said that from another world, the entire human world is turned into an illusory virtual world. That's why I repeatedly referred to the Matrix just now, and to the widely accepted idea today that this is a virtual world. But the so-called virtual world actually contains very profound meaning. We have no reason at all to say that we are not living in a virtual world right now, because many of the things we do now are not real. If there was something truly real, then all the phone calls we make, our internet, and the information we have now, none of it could possibly be realized without any obstacles at all. And as for the consciousness of each person now, we all know that there is no reason to say it is not a dream. It should be said that in the past no one could give such a reason, and in the future no one will be able to either. So just now it was only that each person's understanding is different. In reality, life truly is like a dream. This kind of dream, you could say, is just like the example I gave earlier. Many of today's illusory worlds leave me feeling confused and dazed. We can also reflect on this in our daily lives. When I eat, am I really eating or am I eating in a dream? Of course, our usual habits in life are not the same as this. I've seen that many great masters and literary figures of the past, they weren't foolish either. For example, Wang Anshi of the Song dynasty, he also once said, "Life and death are like waking from a dream. This truth is very clear. Life and death are essentially a dream, and now it is understood." In fact, the Song dynasty writer Wang Anshi understood this principle. I believe he didn't understand it just to make his poetry sound good. It wasn't like that. Some writers, after long periods of contemplation and observation, only then truly realize, oh, it was all just a dream. Nowadays, many people, for example, some people, when faced with emotional struggles or hardships and finally have no way out, they realize, oh, in this lifetime I was having a nightmare. At that moment, they wake up a little in a dazed and confused state. but after a while they're blinded again. So this issue really does require many young people to explore it deeply. It's not as simple as just telling a story.
Master, hello. I'm a student from the Chinese department at the Hong Kong Institute of Education. I'd like to ask you, Master, besides dreams, there's actually another prominent issue for modern people, which is, for thousands of years, I feel that people still haven't learned how to love. So from the Buddhist perspective, how is love understood? And if the Buddha's love is to save all sentient beings, then who loves the Buddha?
Well, wouldn't it be good if all sentient beings love the Buddha? Because the Buddha loves all sentient beings, so all sentient beings also love the Buddha. In the world, people often say, "You love me, I love you." So, in this way, the Buddha loves all sentient beings. If all sentient beings don't love the Buddha, then these beings would have no conscience.
Let me clarify. I think sentient beings love the Buddha because they place their hopes in the Buddha. But the Buddha's love for sentient beings is selfless and without desire. I feel that this kind of love is not equal. What is your view on this issue?
It's like this. The Buddha loves all sentient beings. What I said earlier was half in jest, but also sincere. One is worldly love. In fact, people often say about love, there are two kinds of love. One is possessive and the other is about giving. I think the love in this world is a kind of small love, because when you love me, I love you, but when you don't love me, I hate you. There was even a book before called Love You to Death, because when he didn't love me, I loved him so much that I ended up killing him. There are cases like this. Even in some universities nowadays, such incidents still happen. But in fact, the Buddha's love for sentient beings is of two kinds. One is called compassion, and compassion itself has conditional love and unconditional love. What is called unconditional love is understood from the perspective of the emptiness of the Dharma realm. Right now, it's very difficult for us to grasp its meaning. The Buddha's love for all sentient beings is completely unconditional. As long as sentient beings are suffering, the Buddha cherishes every sentient being as if they were his own children. This kind of love is called great love. We often talk about what is called great compassion. Such great compassion can extend to all sentient beings. Even if some sentient beings do not love the Buddha, this can also be seen in the Buddha's biographies. The Buddha never complained at all. What does this mean in Buddhism? When others treat me well, I must repay their kindness. When others treat me badly, I must not seek revenge. This is a fundamental principle of Buddhism. However, some Buddhists often fail to live up to this in practice. If you treat me well, I treat you well. If you treat me badly, I treat you badly too. This is how worldly people act. Worldly people are like this. If someone treats me well, I treat them well. If someone hates me, I will hate them too. There are people like this as well. So this way of acting is the way of the world.
Respected Khenpo, hello. I am a graduate student in the Chinese department of the School of Education. In 2008, I took refuge with a Khenpo from the Five Sciences Buddhist Institute. It is a great honor to meet you here. Following up on the previous student's question, I want to say that this world lacks compassion. But now, especially many young people are still deeply attached to this dream we are in. There are too many temptations in this dream, and we are unwilling to wake up. I am willing to sink into this dream and never wake up for all eternity. Khenpo, please give us guidance. How should we properly give rise to renunciation? Thank you, Khenpo.
If we make a solemn vow, there are still so many pitiful, unfortunate people who are lost, wandering helplessly in the dream. We need to save them, to reach out and help them, to offer our support and guidance. But the very first and most important prerequisite is that we ourselves must truly understand and be fully aware before we can help others. Some of the principles regarding renunciation and bodhicitta. I have noticed that many young people nowadays are not opposed to Buddhism, but when it comes to the meaning of Buddhism or other religions, they do not study it in depth. They have not truly grasped the actual teachings in their own hands. This is a significant challenge for many people, for many individuals in various situations. Although we need to work and study, as we all know, and we cannot neglect these worldly academic subjects, Why is it that some university students and teachers here in the mainland learn so well and also practice so well? In this case, I think many people should. At the same time, make an effort to study in the world and fulfill some of the truths that they ought to practice. If you want genuine renunciation to arise in your own mind stream, first you need to understand the suffering within the three realms of samsara. This suffering exists whether it is birth, death, or life itself. In every corner of the world, whether in the city or anywhere else, there are always all kinds of suffering and pitiful sentient beings. So, as we gradually come to truly understand the entirety of samsara, a sense of renunciation will naturally arise. We see that nowadays many people are indeed faced with great temptations. It's as if they're already dreaming, yet now they still want to play video games all day long. Some college students are even completely addicted to them. They doze off during lectures, but when it comes to playing, they stay up all night. So nowadays, there's even a saying that some people aren't really attending university to study, but to play. After 4 or 5 years of playing, they graduate. They haven't learned any real knowledge at all. It's truly pitiful. So we should try our best to cut off these pitiful behaviors and do something meaningful instead.
After I started practicing Buddhism, I gradually restrained my old temper one by one. But I found that my friends and companions around me kept taking advantage of me or deceiving me. And I tried my best to forgive them all, because I believe that everything is like a dream, an illusion, like bubbles and shadows. So why be attached? But should I continue to endure and be patient? If I do, won't others see me as the most foolish person? And living like this for a lifetime,
that shouldn't be the case. We actually think this is very wise. We should continue to be tolerant and keep practicing patience. Although some people in the world may not necessarily understand this approach, the truth is our society really needs compassion. No matter how others insult or belittle me, I always try my best, even when faced with negativity, to treat them with the broadest, most open and patient heart. This is the unobstructed patience of a bodhisattva.
I have a question. Because I don't like it when others think I'm a bad person, so in many situations I use Buddhist methods. I really want to apply them fully to my friends. Sometimes I want to be good to someone, but many people simply don't really treat me with quite the same open mindset. But if there are things that I have to face and deal with, and often there are unpleasant situations with people, is there any method for this? Thank you.
What are your thoughts? Where exactly do your main worries and doubts lie?
My main worry, honestly, is that if regarding a certain matter, I feel that letting go is the right thing to do, and it truly is a good thing. But the other person, because of their own interests, thinks that it's not good and wants to see things their own way, or when their perspective is different, what method should I use to change them? Or should I just maybe really try to endure it and go along with them?
According to Buddhism, every sentient being has different karmic forces from their past lives. For example, some beings may have been oxen in their previous lives, some may have been horses, and some may have been humans. So now, in a society, there are often various ideological conflicts, even within a single family. At first, people don't really understand each other's mindsets. But eventually, after starting a family and getting married together, there are many conflicts, many disagreements, different ways of thinking, different behaviors. What she likes, I don't like. What I like, she doesn't like. We argue all the time. Actually, trying your best to yield to others is the Buddhist way of tolerance. If you really can't give in, then you can only stick to your own views. But in such cases, everyone insists on their own opinions, and conflicts are likely to happen frequently. So first we need to understand that not everything, I think I'm right, or I feel that my perspective is correct. Sometimes when I go all out to defend my own viewpoint, in the end, I realize, oh, the other person's suggestion was actually right, and mine was wrong. This kind of thing happens quite often. So whenever we encounter or face anything in this world, going along with others in our lives is very important. Even when we go out and stay at a hotel, one person likes to keep the lights on while the other turns them off. If someone has a bad temper, even small issues can reveal a poor attitude. If a person can't go along with others, they often bring a lot of pain to those around them. But if someone can go along with others, they themselves will also feel happy. I often think this way, even if I don't want to do something. If someone else insists on doing it, then I'll just go with the flow. I'll still go along with them. Otherwise, between the two of us, when it's unnecessary, a lot of conflicts and arguments arise. Nowadays, many families get divorced. Families are not harmonious. It's simply because their ideas are different. They can't get along. And often you say one thing, I say another. One person likes to have porridge for lunch, while the other says, no porridge, I want noodles. Because of such a small matter, they start arguing, and in the end, it turns into a fight. Is it necessary? It's really not necessary. That's why it's so important for us to go along with others. Among you, those who don't believe in Buddhism or have no faith at all, you can ask any kind of question.
Respected Khenpo Sodargye, hello. I have a very simple question I'd like to ask. If I first practice the Sutrayana and then the Vajrayana, or practice both at the same time, is that okay? Will it affect the progress and effectiveness of my practice? Thank you.
As for practicing Sutrayana and Vajrayana, actually, we in Tibetan Buddhism, for example, both Sutrayana and Vajrayana are fully integrated. There's no such thing as practicing only Sutrayana first and then Vajrayana separately. That doesn't exist. So practicing both Sutrayana and Vajrayana won't have any negative impact at all. They can absolutely be practiced at the same time. Moreover, practicing Vajrayana together with any other form of Sutrayana, nowadays, some people who don't really understand Buddhism often say, I'm a practitioner of Sutrayana and he's a practitioner of Vajrayana, including Tibetan Buddhism, which some people consider to be just a form of Vajrayana. This is a mistaken view. In fact, Tibetan Buddhism fully integrates both Sutrayana and Vajrayana. There's no such thing as practicing only Vajrayana alone. For example, everyone studies the Heart Sutra and the Diamond Sutra. There's no one who doesn't study them. Therefore, we don't really understand much about Vajrayana. Especially nowadays, some Pure Land and Chan practitioners think that they say that Tibetan Buddhism is all about practicing Vajrayana and that their system is different from our schools. But this kind of statement is actually unreasonable. All the teachings should be able to be fully integrated and understood together.
Venerable Khenpo, please forgive me.
I don't speak Mandarin.
I'd like to ask a question.
What's the difference between the dreams of a practitioner and those of an ordinary person?
Practitioners and ordinary people. In fact, practitioners can also be called ordinary people. But there is a difference between the dreams of a bodhisattva and those of an ordinary person. But among practitioners, many are still ordinary people, at least in appearance. So basically, there's not much difference, because they are still ordinary people, after all.
Then, could the master explain what is different about the dreams of a bodhisattva?
Bodhisattvas have many kinds of dreams. Just as they are not attached to any appearances during the day, at night when they dream, they also experience pure lands. It's not like us, who experience all kinds of suffering and afflictions in our dreams at night. These bodhisattvas' dreams are impossible. Most ordinary practitioners appear as ordinary people. Therefore, ordinary people and those who practice spiritual cultivation can be considered the same.
Hello, Khenpo. I started studying your teachings on entering the path of enlightenment this year. However, when discussing the Anren Pin, a text on patience and forbearance, there's something you just mentioned. When someone treats you badly or takes advantage of you, of course you should still treat them with a mind of patience and not develop any anger or hatred toward them. But from my perspective, we are merely enduring them and not giving rise to anger at this level. But as for the other person, we are not actually generating compassion toward them. Because I think that if our patience is just for our own, to gain some advantage or benefit in our own practice, then toward them, whether they develop anger or a manipulative, greedy mindset. So many times when I do this, I make sure to let them know that if you take advantage of me or do something bad to me, I will tell you that what you're doing is wrong. I hope you won't continue to do this. I'm not sure if this mindset...
If you are completely using good intentions to stop them, to prevent their malice from spreading further, then that's acceptable. If you approach them with a selfish heart and harbor anger toward them, we would say that is unreasonable.
Thank you, Khenpo.
Hello, Khenpo. Here's the situation. We have many fellow practitioners who practice together. Everyone has seen many of your teachings online, and we all feel very delighted. We have a common question we'd like to ask. If we want to follow you, Khenpo, to study at the Buddhist Institute, what are the requirements and how should we go about it?
I think to go to the Buddhist Institute, because the altitude there is quite high and accommodations are also inconvenient. There are also many issues like altitude sickness and so on. I feel that now by studying through the internet or with DVDs, the teachings I give at the Buddhist Institute, basically, except for a very few esoteric teachings, are all shared with everyone through various organizations and channels. The internet is very advanced nowadays. Studying in this way might actually be a bit more convenient.
I'm currently a student in the second year of junior high school, right now. I've also been a Buddhist for 2 or 3 years, so I have some understanding. Recently, I've encountered some problems. Because after entering middle school, my school is actually a Christian school. If I tell my classmates that I'm a Buddhist, they look at me with a rather discriminatory attitude, thinking that what I believe in is heresy or something like that. There's another situation. Someone in my family has also become a monastic. Many times, for example, when I'm walking down the street with my family, I don't know whether I should acknowledge my family or not. If I do acknowledge them, if someone or an acquaintance sees us, there will be a kind of... Because in today's society, many people don't really accept the act of becoming a monastic. In addition, some relatives also don't really accept that my family member has become a monastic. They think it's a very tragic thing. I want to ask, if I encounter this kind of situation, how should I face it?
Your question is very good and very practical. First, I think since you are in a Christian school, it's quite possible that some people don't understand your actions. But it's also very possible that it's just a psychological effect on your part. Sometimes, if the group of people around you happens to belong to another religion or follows a different set of beliefs, you might begin to feel as though everything you say and do is being carefully watched or observed by others. At times like this, on one hand, I think whether you're a Christian, a Buddhist, or from another religion, there's no need to change your own faith. This cannot be changed. Nowadays, many people try to change their faith through various means. But it's best not to change your faith. However, I think that there is a lot of mutual understanding among Christians as well. For example, I've heard that here in Hong Kong, some teachers, Buddhist teachers, go to Christian schools to give lectures. And Christian teachers go to Buddhist schools to give lectures. There are also teachers from other religions giving lectures, and all of this is widely accepted. So I think that gradually all religions mutually understand, respect, learn from, and not exclude each other. No one should treat others differently because of this. In fact, people who study religion are not the majority in this large society. And as I mentioned earlier, every religion has a compassionate side. So I think you probably won't encounter any major difficulties there. Maybe it's just a psychological effect on your part. If there are other behaviors, perhaps you can try to understand them through other means, or take other measures if necessary. Overall, there is no need for things to happen as they did in some parts of history, conflicts between religions or religious followers excluding each other. I really hope not to see such things happen. The second thing, as you just mentioned a moment ago, is the so-called suffering experienced by monastics. I felt the same way when I became a monk. I also had that feeling, because at that time, although in Tibetan region everyone highly praised those who became monks, but my classmates, my teachers, and many of my friends were very sad. They said, "You're finished now." Later on, although I was a monk, when people saw me, they didn't actually dislike me that much. So for your relatives, I think maybe on the street or in other situations, it's true that nowadays in some groups monks are seen as sensitive or even discriminated against. That does happen. But in some places, monks are also welcomed. There are also many people who show respect towards them. No matter which country you go to, being a monk isn't all that unusual nowadays. It's not like in the 70s or 80s. Back in the 70s at that time, during the Cultural Revolution, if someone wore monastic robes, they would definitely be sentenced. That kind of world doesn't exist anymore. Now it's just a matter of some lifestyle habits. In fact, over time, many people will gradually accept it. So I think it doesn't really matter how others see you. We should be strong ourselves and even show off a bit more in front of others. Go out on the street together, talk with friends and family, and speak about the merits of becoming a monk. Gradually, these people too, those who were especially opposed before, it's very possible that they might have the chance to become monks in the future as well.
Respected Khenpo, I study finance and I am your student. I feel that dreaming is actually a kind of attachment. The saying, life is like a dream, is meant to tell people not to be attached. Those who don't acknowledge the existence of dreams, that's just a personal attachment. Those who acknowledge dreams are not attached. As for the real world, some people understand it as existing but not truly real. My question is the dedicated pursuit and practice of Buddhism in our daily lives also perhaps just a dream? Thank you, Khenpo.
It should be a dream, but is there any reality within a dream? For the person dreaming, it feels real in the moment. But in fact, it still doesn't escape being a dream. Life is a dream. But when it comes to practicing Buddhism, as I mentioned very clearly in my talk just now, I said, we accumulate dreamlike and illusory merit and attain dreamlike and illusory wisdom. We dispel dreamlike and illusory obstacles and ultimately attain the dreamlike and illusory fruit of Buddhahood. Now, although sentient beings in samsara are dreaming, there is suffering in the dream. And if you want to eliminate that suffering, you must attain dreamlike liberation in order to truly realize the value of your life. Therefore, this principle requires a deeper understanding of the Avatamsaka Sutra, finding comfort and ease in the illusoriness of things, and so on.